Rocking Chair Session. With Elisa Di Battista and Maria Teresa Barber.
Hi everyone! And welcome to our 10th RCS Rocking Chair Sessions with our very special guest, Eddie Arroyo. Hello, Mr. Eddie. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Eddie.
Hi.
I guess since we are starting today, I guess a little bit early, I'll just go ahead and get through to our first question, which I would like to begin with. I have a huge list for you, Mr. Eddie. And my first question for you is, how would you describe your artwork to someone who has never seen it?
Well, I like to start off by saying I'm happy to be here. I followed this since the beginning for obvious reasons. I just say I'm a landscape painter and like urban landscapes. That's how it's the easiest way. It's very easy to describe my work because everybody knows what landscape paintings are. So it really does cut down on a lot of description. And then they asked me if they are interested, which normally people are, what kind of landscapes or urban landscapes, and that's when I get more specific and the conversation begins to unfold.
Okay, very good. And so when did you first start to paint, if that was your first choice of medium?
I always drew and started, through high school, normal stuff. It wasn't until I entered college that I decided to really pick up a brush and give it a go. And that was challenging.
Challenging? How could you expand upon that, please?
Well, because drawing is different from painting, especially, at least it was for me. I use pencil, pen. It's not like, I suppose if you're using charcoal, but even charcoal has its limitation when it comes to paint. You have to deal with color, make sure the paint doesn't get too muddy, it has to remain clear. It's really is a different medium. In terms of having more of a clear idea of what I'm doing, at least the way I'm more comfortable, drawing did help me do that.
Okay, well, to, I guess, go forward a little bit in that, you mentioned that it was challenging. Was it challenging just with the material itself, or did you find challenges, like personally, like did you have support in your family to pursue an artistic career?
Well, my father painted, but he wasn't necessarily supportive because it's not practical in terms of the financial aspects of it. So neither my mother or my father were supportive in pursuing this as a career. In reference to painting itself, it's a technical problem that I had initially. I had to really get used to the material with the discipline, essentially. So it needed a little bit of skill. Abstraction does help to get comfortable with the painting because there are no consequences in abstraction. It's just a matter of having an emotional connection with the execution of the medium of the paint.
This is true. Well, my question also would be going, I guess, forward into, like you mentioned, abstraction. I feel that your work is not abstract. Did you go through a series of starting in the abstract and then getting to the more like landscape and somewhat realistic?
No. I did have a period where I was dealing with abstraction in terms of the paint application, what I wanted to convey emotionally through the material, through the medium. No, I went through a lot of series of work before I arrived at the landscapes, but the landscapes were more circumstantial than anything else. I suppose all series of work are circumstantial to individual artists. It's a very personal process, how one chooses to depict their work, what material they decide to have an affinity for. So, yeah. Yes.
Okay. I'm like that you brought that up because I certainly wrote that down in here. I wrote down where I wrote down lots of questions. I'm glad we're going through these. Does the subject supersede the context thematically, or do you find a historic building, since that's what you're doing now, landscapes, you're doing specific buildings within our community here locally in South Florida, or do you just decide, oh, I like what that looks like, and then find out about the history of the building? Like, how do you go about selecting your subjects?
The latter, I think. It's more of a I like that building. I want to find out more about it. Rarely is it a case where it's like a historical building and I decide to paint it. If that was the case, I'd be doing paintings of the Freedom Tower or some other historical structure. So yeah, it has to do a lot with just my curiosity of the neighborhood I'm in. I'm part of this community, and I want to be more mindful of that, in terms of trying to learn about it and uncover its own narrative, which is important for me.
Okay. So the community that we are talking about, did you mention it?
No, I haven't mentioned the community. It's Little Haiti. Currently, yes.
Okay. I wanted to also, I'm sorry, Maria, like totally having all these questions. You mentioned that you didn't really take art as a potential career path seriously, or even consider it more until college. How was it that your college experience influenced or more or less formed your artistic practice and journey?
Well, you go through college and it's like it's undergrad, and at the time I went to FIU, and we had the core requirements. I don't know if that's still going on in college.
General electives.
Yeah, general electives, and I went through all of it. I even, since at the time it was known more for a business school, I considered going to business for a brief moment. But then I just had to answer the question, well, what is it I want to do with my life? And then naturally it just, the answer at the moment was art, and it hasn't really shifted since then. So it's a funny thing how that works, Yeah.
That's what struck you.
Yeah.
And so you were enrolling in the business course already?
I took a class.
You took one class?
I took one class and I just was not interested in it at all. I was just not, it just didn't appeal to me. Maybe it was the professor, maybe it's me, I don't know. And business has never been a fascination for me, which can be problematic.
Oh, you want to go down that career path, that would make perfect sense.
And when did you take your first art class, and what semester were you in college?
I was in freshman year. I didn't waste any time with it.
Freshman year already?
Oh, yeah. I had taken some classes in high school, but I just wanted to jump in there and see what college had to offer. But, it's FIU, so.
And did you take any other classes other than painting?
I took drawing and printmaking. And then we went into theory classes, thesis 1 and 2, and then it was those classes. It was all just like the academic process of graduating with a bachelor's.
Was there a professor that was inspiring you more to really pursue your work?
That's an interesting question to ask, because I had a number of professors in college. And one stood out in particular, and it was very strange because of the nature of how he taught. He was very militant in the way he was teaching. It kind of reminded me of that film Whiplash. I don't know if your audience has ever seen it, but if the sensibility of that film, how demanding the professor was in the film, to a point where it got... it was
abusive, right? It was like that the student basically had a complete breakdown because
there's something incredibly...
Sorry, that sounds like school.
There's something incredibly exhilarating about that in retrospect, and even at the moment, being challenged so excessively.
Who was that professor?
I don't know if I should say. He's still teaching. Yeah.
Why not?
Teaching. I don't know. Stacey.
He's still teaching at FIU.
Okay.
Yeah, so it might be better. I mean,
But you had a positive experience with him.
yeah, in retrospect, it is a positive. But I mean, nothing that's worth having doesn't have any negative consequences to it. Mm-hmm. And plus, when you're being challenged like that, and it is, as you say, there is gonna, it's always gonna have its downside to it. But luckily, there were other professors that were more nurturing.
Mm-hmm. To offset that. Yeah.
Did you have a breakdown during college because of that professor?
I don't know. It seems like the whole process was a breakdown.
Yeah,
from the beginning, it was.
Your whole experience in undergrad was a whole breakdown.
No, only with that professor.
With the one. How many classes did you take with him?
Oh, I took about 3 semesters with him. Sometimes 2 classes 1 semester. It was awesome.
So he completely obliterated you, and you went back for more, basically.
I like the challenge.
Mm-hmm. I like the challenge. Yeah. And I also feel like through that process, it does make you a stronger artist. Mm-hmm. Were there any...
I like to think so. I mean, I don't even know, to be honest with you.
I have to say, I don't know. I mean, we both went to art school, too. I had one teacher in my new genres class that was rough. Not like you described, but rough. But I would have never taken another class with him. I would have just not gone back to him.
I did in undergrad. I had the same experience you did with one certain professor, and I don't think I broke down necessarily, but I did have that that crippling moment, and then after that, I was like, just bring it. I don't know, just anything, grad school, whatever.
Well, it was a different experience for me because I already came into college when I was studying rather confident in my skill and in my vision, and so I was basically very cocky. So it was like the perfect time for a professor like that.
To make you humble.
I don't know about humble. It was just challenging. Humble for me is such a lofty term that doesn't really mean anything in the end.
So you were all like, well, you can't teach me anything. I already know everything. I've been doing this for so long.
Exactly.
That's how you went into.
That was my attitude.
Interesting. Where did you get that attitude from?
Well, again, my father was a painter, and my uncle was a painter, and he had a gallery in Washington, D.C. was painting, so I got a lot of good tips. My father gave me a good history of art, so I was very confident. Of course, this professor had more information, but there weren't many gaps to be filled. So what was left is to raise the bar. Mm-hmm. And I think
you had a lot of homeschooling in art practice and art history already, basically.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah, I did. Mm-hmm. It was interesting. It's interesting because I was given the information, but it wasn't given the kind of weight that it was something that I can do as a career. Mm-hmm. So
they wanted you to learn it, but they didn't want you to.
It was my father, mm-hmm. not my mother. My mother wasn't involved in that, but my father would because he just has a passion for it. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, understood. Mm-hmm. I like that. Okay, well, I guess my following question, did I already ask this? Your artistic influences, like what artists were you looking at that you're like, oh, I'm interested in this type of style or...
Well, right now?
When you were a student and then now as well.
Oof, let me see. I don't know if I want to pronounce his name properly. It's Egon Schiele.
Okay. Egon Schiele. That was pretty close.
Yeah. Not that I was doing work like his at the time, but I did like what he was conveying through the work. I mean, I would think that he's like the male version of, in terms of attraction, as Gustav Klimt was for college girls. Okay. For me, it was like, he was like my Gustav Klimt. I say it because they're both, Austrian. So it's interesting to me. The way Klimt conveys women is diametrically opposed in my the way I interpret it as to how Egon Schiele conveys women.
Why do you think is that? Like that women are more attracted to Klimt and
because Klimt is more romantic about the way he treats women, whereas Schiele tends to it tends to be more primal, even like just more sexual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Far more sexual. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which of course is attractive. It was attractive to me in college, so.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I have here written down, I already asked you that one, I already asked you that one, this one. I feel the word gentrification is really big in the current work you're making right now. How do you feel in terms of the responsibility you have as an artist, as the responsibility you have as a current person living in this South Florida community? And basically, how does, because I could see outsiders being like, well, why are you even painting this subject if it doesn't affect you? How do you speak to gentrification in your artwork? If you could please talk about that a little bit.
Right. So I was in a situation before where I wasn't able to paint. So I ended up essentially doing what you would consider maybe amateur journalism, art journalism. So I would be documenting, interviewing, writing articles on exhibitions here in Miami. And so it turned into my own.
Also writing for the website Art is About.
Yeah, that's how Art is About got formed. And that's another story as well. But it was through that process that I became aware of how artists function in an urban environment. You know, how they survive, how they exhibit, how they promote their work, and what the role of the community is and how they inhabit it. And I began also to notice a pattern that artists are not concerned about the local community. At least when I was doing journalism, 5 to 6 years ago in Miami, this was during Wynwood, there wasn't much interest in the local community, which covered Wynwood, downtown, and the neighborhood in proximity would be Overtown, Liberty City. So it was a lot of the artists I covered were naturally career-oriented, driven artists. So they had to make a living. They're trying to do art, and there's this sensibility that everything else is just consequential. It doesn't really matter. So, which is fine at first, but then it became more of a question of what the artist's role is, since it resides in the space. And during that time, I was still doing. Eventually, I started to get a hold of a space. I started painting again, and I continued a series of work that I initially started before my situation changed, which was urban landscape paintings. Prior to that, I just finished wrapping up a series of work on family portraits, and so the buildings essentially became portraits for me. Because a neighborhood has its own caricature to it, and each of the buildings have their own character. I began to notice that. And so I continued that work, just painting portraits essentially of the neighborhood, and the consequences of what I did with art journalism began to inform my practice in painting, and hence realization of gentrification for me within the context of the art community became more of a revelation for me. And I took it personally. So it became more of a focal point in the work, and what it means to be an artist, and their role within the economic growth of a neighborhood, and who an artist, or who and since this is about my work, who I would align myself with. So that's the driving force through the work right now. And I'm like, these days I'm just trying to understand how effective I am in trying to meet these goals, not simply creating awareness, but trying to shift the trajectory that everyone's at least in our community, is certain will be the outcome of this process, since historically it's always been one of class, economic class. So just, the basic role of gentrification is to move poor people out and bring in people with more money, and then it becomes more luxurious and more safer for people in a higher economic position.
Yeah, just for our listeners, since you couldn't see that, I did put safer in quotation marks because it is an assumption that these communities aren't necessarily safe to begin with, when it's just like a different, I could say, environment, different people, and just sometimes it's that misunderstanding of what a community stands for that brings this misunderstanding and brings this outsider perspective of wanting to change the landscape. I don't know if we'll see I think we'll see within our lifetime these landscapes that you've been painting changing, but I think that the artistic historical importance of you actually documenting the change of these communities is crucial here in South Florida.
I agree. I think I'm trying to transcend just the historical documentary aspect of it and try to move it into like actually shifting the projection of the future in terms of future history. So not really terribly interested these days in taking a passive role in the process of documenting the inevitable change that's happening within this neighborhood, which is Little Haiti. It was interesting because I've been talking to a lot of artists about this since I am in the community, and I've always, I've been talking to a number of them about this component of class and the economic aspects of it. But also a lot of them have an aversion to talking about race. And since this is a Haitian community and also an African American community, and most artists are white, if not white, Hispanic, but on a lighter complexion, there is an aversion to talking about race, especially in this country, but it's not restricted. I mean, Caribbean and South American countries are incredibly racist as well. And I think it's a problem that at least I like to think we're coming out of this this period of time of color blindness in terms of social, economic, racial discussions in this country and in just globally in general. But it's a slow process, it's an uncomfortable process. Even I occasionally get reminded of how I've been compromised in how the system of control and oppression has happened for hundreds and thousands of years. Well, hundreds of years in this country, to be more specific, And in terms of Miami and how Caribbean, I mean, I talk about gentrification in terms of colonization as well.
Yeah, I understand that.
Which makes sense. And it's nefarious how the legacy of that has been modified to gentrification, because the process is essentially the same. We're just moving people from one area to another that have less power or less influence, and the people who just want the land are going to take it. And the laws are going to be changed to accommodate them if they're not already.
How much influence do you think does your own background, like your ancestry, play in that? Like you were born in Miami, but your mother is from Colombia, your dad is from Peru. What do you think? How does that connect with the work that you're doing?
I don't think I have a choice in that matter. I mean, there are other people from that have an ancestry that's South America that align themselves with people of power, but that's more of that's a personal decision based on their own personal history. But I don't know, I just get I'm just not comfortable aligning myself with that. It's also not very interesting either. I mean, it'll be smarter, of course, to align myself with people that are winners and are wealthy. But it's not interesting. It doesn't really create any kind of real change. It's something we've seen before. So I think aligning myself with people who are on the losing end, there's more to learn from helping them, or for speaking from their point of view, or just coming from that perspective than from the other end.
Sorry to interrupt you. Can it be said, just to rephrase what you're saying, that through aligning yourself through people that might be going through certain their struggles, or having to find inspirational or challenging ways to get through or persevere through their certain situations, that's definitely more interesting than somebody who might have everything already figured out or already settled or be taken care of?
Yeah, winners are boring.
I always consider myself an underdog myself. I'm really keen on how you pointed out to the artistic community here in Miami. I wrote down, how do you feel about our current Miami art community? How has it grown, or how has it changed since you entered it?
There's a lot of concerns that were happening when I came in about, there was even a denial at some, in the very beginning. I don't know if it was just hyperbole, but they were saying there was no art community when I started. And this was in 2011. And I thought it was like such an absurd, a lot of them did. And I think it was more of a, I don't know whether it's just them being antagonistic or strategic, and because they knew I was doing art journalism just to get me to talk about it. That being said, it did help to talk about it anyway in that context, but they weren't exactly wrong. When Art Basel came, they decimated the South American art community that was part of the Coral Gables area, and Art Miami took a severe hit for a moment because all the focus was on Art Basel, and everybody was trying to understand what Art Basel was, what they were trying to sell the market, what it had to offer the contemporary art world and global art world. So yeah, that was, for Miami it was a humbling experience, but it did strip away in terms of the art community its identity. And so I thought the first priority in terms of what I was doing is trying to reclaim our identity as a community, as an art community, and essentially take some pride in what we have to offer as a city and contribute to the rest of the world in terms of art. So that's what was the case. In terms of how it is right now, I think right now we're not really different from any other city in the world at this point. We have our community. Every single region in the world, in terms of having an art community, have complaints about being part of the art market or contributing. So we're there. Maybe, of course, to a lesser extent in California, Berlin, or New York. But I've been to these places. All these artists, they're pretty much on the same boat in terms of trying to be relevant, and it's something reassuring about it, but also, it's kind of sad because I think it's better to try to use the tools that are around you and use it to speak to the, in terms of what they have to contribute to the global conversation, not just in art, but just in everything. But if your vehicle is art, use it to speak to that.
We are a much younger city, I feel. So even though these other cities you mentioned, LA, Berlin, and New York, have had more experience than us building these art communities.
Yeah, but we essentially as far as I know, maybe to an extent California, but I think we've surpassed California, LA in particular, or San Francisco in terms of the immigration experience. Ours is more concentrated, and especially in this contemporary, in this time, we have a lot to offer in terms of what immigrants have to offer in the 21st century than any other city in the United States, and certain parts of the world as well. So it can be argued that a lot of the immigrants in this city have contributed greatly, and we have a lot of examples of that. We just need writers and artists to really put focus on it and use it in every way they can, whether it's economically or for their prestige, or because in the end it's going to benefit the world in general if whatever we have to offer helps us all move along forward,
Great. I wrote down, there's the AC. How do you support your artistic practice and find a balance within that between what you do and then actually painting?
Well, I have a day job. So I think psychologically what helped me a lot with working in a full-time job was to just treat it as a hobby. Because it really did like lower the bar psychologically, because then I could just have fun with it. And I've noticed, having done this for so long, if I put too much importance on producing artwork or practicing artwork, it kind of basically implodes in itself. Yeah, so...
you
so
also created this hashtag Sunday Painter for this purpose?
Yeah, I couldn't, because it just made it more of a banal thing. And it made it more playful, and I could just if I don't matter, then nothing I do matters, then I could do whatever I want. It's that old maxim, So by just keeping myself seen as this harmless thing, I can actually do whatever I wanted, and I can be banal with my work, and I'll also be antagonistic with it. Nothing really did matter. I guess in that respect, the sense of nihilism was helpful in that sense, but only within the context of just a greater objective for me.
And I mean, a lot of people in our community didn't even know that you were a painter, right? They knew you as...
Not initially. They just saw me as a person that just went around and photographed people in an interview. So, and plus, you have to keep in mind, at the time, this was 6 or 7 years ago, painting wasn't seen as a serious form of contemporary art. I mean, I think it's shifted a little bit more now, but before it was more like video, performance art, very theoretical work, which tends to be academic and also rather elusive, abstract within its own conceptual framework. So nothing representational was seen as serious or notable. So I think that still exists to an extent right now, but things have changed so much in this country that there is a desire for some sort of representation through artwork in order to give a voice for where we are right now. So it's interesting. It just, circumstances have just made it easier for me to do what I do. Even people who saw my work before would not exhibit me because they didn't think that they're landscape paintings, so it wasn't seen as a serious thing. But within the context of gentrification and where we are right now politically, it makes a lot more sense to people. So in that respect, I'm able to just surprisingly do more than I did before. It's a little odd. I was speaking with Maria about this, how it's a weird position to be in, to be actually listened to, because I was just accustomed to be dismissed for so long. Because I was always asking questions about, essentially ethical questions about what the art community was doing. And a lot of what I was just being dismissed most of the time. And it's only now that things are beginning to shift, and I don't know how to deal with being taken seriously. It's such a foreign thing to me.
Well, maybe it's
bizarre.
You mentioned this personal desire to not take yourself seriously, or not to have any certain standards or expectations for yourself. Therefore, you never are disappointed or you never fail. So maybe it's this change, this flip of the switch that you're accustomed to.
It's easy to do it in your own mind, but when other people start treating you differently, that's when things start to oh wow, you are paying attention to what I'm saying, or you agree with me, or you're waiting to see if I have anything more to, they're following me. So it's bizarre. I'm not used to it. I don't know.
And one of the first shows actually that when you showed this work, these landscape works, was here at the Bakehouse.
Oh,
in the Swenson Gallery.
Everything always comes back.
Yeah,
the first people that kind of gave you a platform.
Well, it's bizarre. Justin Long was curating.
He was the curator here at the Bakehouse.
At the Bakehouse, right? Time. So it's funny because I was following his work. I wrote articles about his work, and I guess to an extent I was an admirer, but not because of a technical reason. I mean, he creates what is essentially dumb art. He says so himself. They're
sculptural pieces, but
but they're absurdist in nature.
Yeah.
But they always have like this subversive edge to them, and critical edge to them, and playful edge to them. And I always found his work very interesting in that way. But I never, he's a very elusive. Not. I don't want to say elusive, but just he's just not. He just seems very uninterested most of the time. And it seems I just take it more like it's his persona, and so I never took him seriously either. It's like, he just wants to behave this way because he's having fun. So I thought it was odd that he actually asked me to do an exhibition at the Swenson Shot,
which was actually a really interesting program. Justin Long created like this series called Swenson Shots, which is also kind of like a funny name for shows. But it was over the summer that our smaller gallery was had openings every week.
Oh, that's exciting!
So local artists, emerging artists, got a lot of them got the chance to show in that space.
Which was the interesting thing is the artist was also the curator. Mm-hmm. So they were able to use this space, and he gave complete freedom. He wasn't even. I mean, it was great because it wasn't so much as he gave freedom. He just conveyed the feeling that he just did not give a shit. So, which was perfect. Because I would constantly I think I asked him once or twice, if this is okay. The first one was I'm going to be talking about, gentrification. And are you sure you want me to talk about that? And it's yeah, go for it. I don't give a shit. So I'm okay, so... Are you sure I'm gonna be there, because it's gonna be specifically actually I didn't go into details about it, but I'm I didn't want to, and a lot of the work was basically contextualizing the exhibition on galleries' role in gentrification. So these galleries, which I thought were important, I put them next to buildings that were in the neighborhood, so it gave the illusion that they were part of the neighborhood, but also part of the way it's shaping into the future. So, and I said so much in the artist statement as well. So that one was good. That one was really good, and then I just took it from there. And then I've just been going on this series of exhibitions based on gentrification, and a lot of the paintings have been curated in that way. I remember because I had one of the paintings that was a fun one because I that's the only one I remember that it's the only one that I had complete freedom for curating it. So one of the large paintings I had in the back, I didn't light it at all. I just had the other ones lit, but the one in the back wasn't lit. And that was an important one. And I thought it was important only because it was a painting I did of a mural, and the mural doesn't exist anymore. So I decided not to light it. So, yeah.
Yeah, because you have those helicoptering curators, which sometimes, it's great to have specificity and kind of a vision, but they're very particular. This is a specific piece I want, this is how I want it hung. But the fact that you had local artists such as yourself just be given, here, free reign, do whatever the hell you want, that's
I've come to realization, this was even before I did the Swenson Shot, that it's not that Miami, especially at the time, but, even to this day, it's not that Miami doesn't have good artists. We have very good artists. We just have horrible curators. We just do. And I think a lot of the fact that they're bad is only because they serve different interests. So there are other variables to be consideration, whether the institution they're in or who's pulling their strings financially. So there's a lot of variables. So the way the work is curated has a lot to do with who they're trying to speak to and who they're trying not to upset. So it leads to making a lot of the artists in Miami look very bad and not important at all. There's no teeth to the exhibitions because the curation is so bad. So I think it's not that Miami has an artist problem, it has a curator problem. We have bad curators in Miami, and it's because a lot of them have no backbone. And I could understand that, but if we're really going to be doing important work or say something here, our curators have to have more backbone.
And not have so many limitations. Perhaps it's limitations of space and, like you said, opportunities to, like...
No, it's not limitations of space. No, it's a conceptual problem. They need to really believe in what they're doing and choose the artists and actually feel like they believe in saying something through the artists they curate. I've seen really great curated shows in horrible spaces, quote unquote unprofessional spaces, but they know how to curate. And it's not so much as they know how to curate, they actually believe in what they have to say through the curation of the work.
Yeah.
So it's the curators. The curators can be good, they just need more of a backbone.
Okay.
We have spineless curators in Miami.
Well, I guess to rephrase what I meant, not lack of spaces, but like sometimes, like you say, those who are in control of those spaces and what's the...
That's really what it is.
That's what I mean. So not
limitations.
Limitation, not a space, like, oh, there is no space, but who's in control?
No, it's just my opinion, but it's a political thing, really. I mean, and I think it does require a lot of bravery on the curator's part because they have to put a lot of risk in there. I've been exhibiting in a number of different spaces in Miami, and it's always been like, some spaces I don't exhibit because I noticed that the curator has no backbone. So it's just gonna really take away from what I'm trying to do through the work. So I have had to say no to certain exhibitions. So, and sometimes I have to I also have to censor myself in terms of how much I want to say through the work because I don't want to get the other person in trouble. And I'm grateful for the amount of freedom I have in terms of getting certain pieces into the show. So that goes in terms of career. I'm just trying to be more mindful of how to exhibit the work and who I exhibit with in terms of the curator. Yeah.
Currently, you have a couple of paintings up in the Spinallo Project Gallery, and also in the Haitian Heritage Museum.
Yeah, and I have one painting at the FIU Miami Beach Urban Studios.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about those shows and what is like as satisfying about them in the curation, but also how it speaks to your artwork, and also.
Well, it's interesting because this is like the first time. This goes back to what I mentioned earlier. I'm in a very strange place because I'm so used to. Things not going, just being constantly in a compromising position or just second guessing myself. And now I'm like in a position where everybody's just like alarmingly welcoming and so much so that it's I don't know what to make of it. It raises a lot of flags with me because like, am I really doing good work if people are like going along with it so much? Or shouldn't there be a little bit more dialogue in terms of what I'm trying to do? So I don't know, I have to reflect on that. But in terms of these 3 exhibitions, which I'm very surprised that it's happening, it almost seems like the term gentrification has become so normalized that I don't know if it's as effective as it is anymore. But the context is still important. So the context within the Haitian Heritage Museum, which most artists, even artists, don't know that exists in the design district of all places, and
right opposite of the old ICA building, where they
right
just
opposite
moved
over the ICA building.
Mm-hmm.
So it was odd to because I'm not Haitian, and I was going through the library, and they usually show Haitian artists in there, but because they're aware that I'm talking about gentrification of Little Haiti, they were very interested. And they actually thought it was better that I wasn't Haitian, that I took an interest in a neighborhood that I really have. I'm sure in their eyes and everyone else within the Haitian community have really nothing to do with. But since I reside in the neighborhood and I live in there, I've taken an interest in it. So that one was exciting. and very strange in the sense that they were like I had they're just welcoming. And also the Spinello exhibition. I was talking to Maria about this for a while. I've been wanting to exhibit with Spinello, and I didn't really, we never really got into long discussions in the past. And all of a sudden he had, at least for me, it seemed like he had a genuine interest in what I was doing. And I think a lot of it has to do, again, with circumstances being what they are. Context, again, is so important. And his new space, at least it's been there for 2 years, almost 3 years, is in Little Haiti. So these are concerns he has in reference to gentrification. And I don't think he's interested in following the old model as well. He wants to do something different. So he thought it would be a great idea to have me come in. And he gave, in typical Spinello fashion, a very interesting name for the group exhibition, which is called Mere Facade. And it's framed in a way that he wanted to give a platform for Miami artists to just show their work, but under the frame of it just being presented as mere facade. And I was included along with a number of other artists, including Serge Toussaint, that, of course, I'm a great admirer of his murals. He basically has given a visual identity to Little Haiti.
And he is a Haitian artist.
He's a Haitian artist, and he's lived there.
He was born in Haiti.
I believe
right?
so. I believe so.
And then he lived up north.
Yeah,
first,
he was in New York for a while, and then he moved
down.
He came down, I think, around 94, and then he stayed here ever since.
And started painting murals all over Little Haiti, especially for businesses also, right?
That's how he made his bread and butter. He's a muralist for local businesses there. He would start as a sign painter, and then he persuaded or just business started demanding after he persuaded a couple of them to do more murals. And that's where he is right now. He's doing a number of murals, essentially fighting gentrification by creating an identity of the neighborhood, showing that there are aspects of it that has economic prosperity, that there's a community to live there, rather than the old narrative by developers that nothing was here before they arrived to change the neighborhood, or bring it out of nothing.
Okay, very good. I have 2 more questions. The first one is, do you want to discuss any side projects currently, and what is the future direction of your work if you feel that it's going in a different direction than you are right now? So those 2 questions. Do you want to discuss any side projects, and what do you feel is the future direction of your work?
Side projects, the side project is basically still doing the art journalism. I do it on the side just to inform my art practice, my paintings. But in terms of that's the great conundrum I'm in right now, is that they're the normalization of gentrification within the art community has forced me to reevaluate how I want to move forward, because I don't know I think it's good that it has been normalized, because then we can have a conversation about it. But I'd rather have a conversation about it with the rest of the community, people who are interested in doing something different and not following the same model. So I think the great realization is that my work is not just mine alone. It's a collaborative process. I'm not, like, a lot of my work depends on artists, including the Haitian artists. If it wasn't for the local artists or the art community, I wouldn't be in Little Haiti. If it wasn't for the Haitian artists, I wouldn't have realized how important it is to paint their near businesses and show their history. So I think the nature of my work has always been collaborative. So in terms of the future, it's more about collaborating with everybody as we work this out together. It may include even the developers, certain developers that may want to shift, or at least give the illusion that they want to shift. But who knows? It's it's a process. It really is. We'll see what happens.
Because I was curious about if you'd stay in Little Haiti, or if you, I mean, there's other areas that are being gentrified, like, Alapata, Blanca.
Well, I would, but the thing is with Little Haiti is that I may do that. I may intermingle it with other structures. We've been traveling a lot, Maria and I, and I noticed there's gentrification all over the world, really, not just Miami. So I can paint structures that I think are relevant in other parts of the world as well. However, I mean, I've been involved with activist organizations in Miami, so they help inform my work because they speak to the people living in the neighborhood, not the developers, which historically is what the artists are more interested in speaking to, the wealthy. And activist organizations do not do that. They don't care about the wealthy. They care about the people. Right. So, and they're the ones that need a voice. So that's why I've been more interested in aligning my work through them, and trying to understand what their concerns are. The last thing we went through with this TPS thing that still is like a very relevant issue right now. And it's just like another example of a systematic way of just moving people out one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Any questions?
Are we good? Are we good with your questions? Because we're at the end. We are already at the end, and we are.
How much time do you have?
We're ran out of time, but we have always time
for our
very special.
Maria, please ask it.
Which is my job to do. Eddie, you have been sitting on a magical rocking chair. You've been rocking away very gently, I've observed. And so now you have 3 wishes. You can wish for anything. And since it's a magical rocking chair, it's most likely gonna come true sooner or later.
We can only hope.
We can only hope. What would your 3 wishes be?
Well, I mean, I suppose the most obvious one would just, continue to do the work I'm doing. But yeah, I hope to continue doing it because, I mean, circumstances always seem to change. You don't know what's going to happen. So, it'll be nice to do this, more. The second one, I know these questions were coming up. I never really gave too much thought to it because I listened to the podcast before. I don't know. I mean, continue to travel. I mean, everything seems to be going in a good direction. I really, traveling will be good. The third one, I don't know. Yeah, the third one would be good just to, I mean, everything just leads to the first one. It just...
Number 1, making artwork. Number 2, traveling.
Number 3 would be... I don't know. It's weird. My wishes tend to just rely on what's been presented in front of me. I don't have like this. Again, I talked to Maria about this. I don't have like this 20 or 30 year plan, in terms of like a great vision and what I would wish for. I'm basically content with where I am right now and really enjoying like the process of just existing. It's a very interesting thing, how things are just presented, at least to me, and I get to play with it to an extent. It's funny how just to get into like this dialogue with not just everyone, but just like how things are,
2 wishes is good. Yeah. We'll take those 2 wishes.
Very good.
But I guess the third one would be more about the circumstances, just playing with the circumstances more. I hope to continue
the playfulness,
doing that. Yeah, the playfulness. Uh-huh. Like, that's fun. I have a lot of fun with that. I mean, people get upset, and sometimes I get upset, but in the end, it's a lot of fun. It really is.
Thank you so much, Eddie
Thank you so much
Arroyo.
for coming out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This was volume 10 of Rocking Chair
I've been telling Maria from the beginning, I'm like, can we have Eddie Arroyo on the show? Can he come on?
And finally he came.
And finally
Yeah.
he came. So thank you to our listeners.
Thanks
for
so much,
sticking around.
Eddie. Thanks so much to our listeners.
Thank you, Maria.
Thanks, Elisa, for doing this with me.
And we'll catch you next week again for our 11th session of Rocking Chair Sessions.
Oh,
Check
who's
in.
next?
That is a good question.
Andrea. And don't make me say her last name.
We will not slaughter. Andrea S.
We're gonna learn it. We're gonna learn it for next week Monday. Alrighty. Bye guys. Have a good one. Bye bye.